I'm almost ready to start restoring the bonnet. It's got quite a lot of work to do, a lot of rust, same as the rest of the car. But what I want to do is to make a jig that I can put the bonnet on, so I can rotate the bonnet as I'm both working on it and pulling it apart. Now, I have seen a jig on the internet. It was produced by Dave at Classic Car Cave, and it was used for an E Type bonnet. And it means that you can flip the bonnet with one person. You can rotate it around and around. You can also use it, because it rotates, you can use it to pull it apart, and also for later on painting purposes. Now, it does require a little bit of fitting. The one that he made was actually mounted to the air ducts. The air ducts there, and obviously on the other side. So mounted up there at the front, somewhere up in there, and then it was bolted on to, see over there, bolted onto the fitting down there. So it's fairly simple in design. The fairly simple in design. Just has two struts coming down that way, obviously with a bar joining with the bottom, and it then has a tube running across at the pivot point. Now the pivot point, don't know whether you can see it, I've got some green tape just on there. That's roughly where the bonnet pivots. So I've got to have it so the bar comes across this, the pivot bar at that level, and then the whole bonnet just rotates with one hand. So that's the aim. I've got quite used to the rotisserie for the body, and it would certainly make it a lot easier for me working on it alone to have the same ability for the bonnet. So I've got a whole pile of steel over here, which I'll start to fabricate the jig and rotisserie for the bonnet. Bonnet jig. It has four main mounting points to the bonnet. The bottom mount is using I think they're Bonnet centralising latches. The mount itself I've taken off. That's the bonnet catch. It has a captive threaded plate in behind the mount, so I'm actually using those as the means of attaching this bar to it. So it attaches both sides. Now, I've made the bar about 2 millimeters shorter, so I can drop these spacer plates in either side. The reason for that is that makes it a little easier to get the bolts in. If the whole bar is tight, it's very hard to line the bar up with the holes that are welded to the bar with the threaded plate behind. So being able to move it around a bit makes it a bit easier to do that. Now the other mounting point is up on the air ducts, or the heater box on this side. The actual mount goes on to the existing holes here. Now in behind that there's meant to be a captive threaded plate. Unfortunately on this side it fell out, that's it there. It's once again a quarter bolt. Don't know what these were used for, but it looks like they actually haven't been used for anything. They were there for obviously for some reason, but it means I don't have to drill any additional holes in the bonnet. I'm just using existing positions, which is good. So I'll try and get this captive plate back in, and what I'll do, I've got to attach a plate to this which will come out about to here, so I'll bolt the plate on, and then I've got to run the square section bar up from the bottom here up to that captive plate there, and then weld that in position. So they're the main mounts. Now there is one other one which will go from the centre of that to the bonnet latch there, the safety latch. So I'll leave that till last. The reason you put that on is that when you've got the bonnet on the jig, it'll be mounted on a stand, you should be able to take all the panels off. Now you can't obviously take the guards off if it's bolted to this main support here. That's why you actually run another one into the centre section of the bonnet. Once you do that, that means you can remove the side wings, and just makes it a little bit easier to work on. Anyway, I'll continue with this. I've just ready now to put these spaces in and tighten this up so I can then get the correct measurements from the bottom bar up to this top mounting point. So there's a fair way to go yet. All I'm doing at this stage is putting the support onto the actual bonnet. Once I get these uprights on, then I've got to put a pipe. I'll weld it to those uprights. It'll go across at the pivot point, which is about that point there, and that's what will actually sit onto the supports at each side of the bonnet. I've finally got the mounting plates up the top correct. You actually have to bend them a little bit so the support here angles out and sits wider. If you don't do that, it ends up it comes in about here and really probably doesn't provide the right stability. The other thing is that you can't bend the two of them to the same angle, because the air ducts here that they're bolted to are not the same angle on the car. I found that out the hard way when I had the plates bolted direct to the air ducts, and then found that these supports were one was way out and one was a lot further in. So the heater boxes or air ducts don't come down at the same angle. So I guess you can't assume anything. Anyway, what I've done is that I've just clamped them both into place to make sure that they're in the right position. And what I'm now doing is putting some tack welds on the mount up the top here. I've got a couple down the bottom under the support there. I had intended to tack both supports, but I've decided against that because the tack welds aren't incredibly strong, and if I try and unbolt the whole structure, there's a good chance that I'll just break the welds. So what I'm going to do is just work on one side. I've tacked this side, I'll take this off, and then I'll do a permanent weld there and then put it back on and then address the other side. So just take a little bit longer, but I've just got a feeling, yes, they're tacked in place now, but as soon as I unbolt everything and then manhandle the thing off, I'm sure that the tacks will give way. Most of the metal has now been cut for the stands. Obviously, I've said before, the one mounting the bonnet, that's done. These are the stands for the whole thing. I've welded those together. I'm going to join those with those long lengths over there for the width of the bonnet. They'll be held on to those brackets, they'll be bolted onto those brackets. So I've yet to weld those to the stands. I've got to do that. In terms of the axle, that's the axle there, and where it sits is on the top, so I've cut the sections there to weld in as well. So there's a fair bit of welding to do, but the problem I've got is making sure everything is aligned when I weld. So I'll weld these brackets on the bottom, stand these stands up, put the axle in position on top there and weld those to make sure they're all aligned. So there's a fair bit of welding to do. After that, there's still a bit to do. I've got to mount this axle onto the support bars here. I've yet to figure out how to do that, and I've got to make sure I've got collars on the axle so the axle doesn't move backwards and forwards on the stand. So there's still a bit to do. All the cutting's done, but the harder parts now are trying to align things and weld them. I'm about to tack the axle into place. I've cut this square section so it's recessed to actually fit part of the pipe. So that's all worked well. And what I'll do now is just put a couple of tacks on, then take it out and fully weld it. And at this stage I intend to put an angle bracket on here, both top and bottom, and weld that in place too, just to give it a bit of extra strength. I've finished working on these caps. Put a hinge on the back, just welded that on the back there, so that just opens and shuts now. And to close it, I just put a bolt in there and then bolt that down. So it's worked out quite well. The other side just the same. This will be the side with the handle on it to turn the bonnet, but same thing. Hinge on the back, welded to the cap, and then that's to clamp down there. What I've got to do now is just to I've got the collars, but I've got to fit the collars to the inside, and I've got a collar and a plate to go on this side, because this is where the handle will be, and on the other side I've got a collar to go on the outside. Collars on the outside, at this stage I would think they'll be welded to the axle. Collars on the inside won't be. I'm actually going to have those so they can be slid closed once the axle is put in place, and then there will be a threaded bolt to come down into the axle to hold it in position. So I figure that's a lot easier to do. That just gives me a bit of wiggle room when you're putting the axle on and off the frame. But just a little bit of extra work. I finally finished the bonnet jig. This is the stand. I've put large casters on the bottom. They've actually got brakes on each caster, so it enables me to keep it reasonably rigid when I get it into position. The tops on the axle have the caps, which will come down here, and there's a bolt that will go through that, so that's fine. And I've just finished off the actual support structure for the bonnet. I'll put extra braces on there on the axle. I don't think I needed it, but I put them there anyway. And I've got fixed collars on each end, and on that end of course it's got a plate to put the turning arm on. And in addition to the fixed collars, I've got sliding collars which will slide up and basically turn it this way, come up on the inside and stop movement, lateral movement of the axle. So what I'm about to do is to actually position this stand around the bonnet. I don't intend to try and lift the bonnet up over into the stand. I want to see if I can actually put it inside the stand and then bolt the support structure up, and then hopefully lift it up onto the posts on the top. So that's the idea. Whether that works or not remains to be seen. Now, I've managed to get the bonnet up onto the stand. Took two people, just a bar in each end of the axle, and then lift it up. Wasn't as bad as I thought. The balance is not quite there. The top end's a little bit too heavy. That's why this is sitting without any pins in it to hold it in position. So that's where it naturally sits. Does it need a balance? Well, as long as it's close, I think that's all that matters, because even if this was balanced, and the balance point would be somewhere up there, even if it was balanced, as soon as you start taking things off, it then comes out of balance. So the whole idea of this jig is to be able to position it so you can work on it. Now, getting some of these bolts and screws out, it's easier if you can move the bonnet around. And in fact, if I tilt this down the other way, I could sit in front of this and then work in behind the panel here. So that was the idea of it anyway. As I say, the balance is only important, I guess, in my own mind. It would have been nice if it had been balanced about there. But as I say, as soon as I start removing pieces off it, it will be out of balance anyway. It is not quite finished. I've still got to put a support in from here down to the bonnet catch there. So that one's still got to be done. And I think I've said before, the reason you do that is that once that is in place, you can then start removing these wings off. And if you take the wing off, of course, you remove the position point where it's actually holding on the jig. So I've still got to do that. Once I put that in, of course, that's going to I'll add a little bit of weight and that'll probably get it closer to the balance anyway. So I've still got to do that. I've got it so I can lock it in a few positions, actually 4 positions. I can lock it in a vertical position. I put it in there. And obviously I can also lock it with the mouth down, and that was probably a good way to actually work up in there anyway. I can lock it in the horizontal position. So I can lock it in the horizontal position so I can get at the bolts all the way along here. So that's good as well. As you can see from the condition of the bonnet, you probably can't see it closely. I'll just go and get the camera off the stand and I'll show you where the damage is. Alright, you can see along the top here, this main panel here, I'd say is pretty much not salvageable. Won't know fully till I get it off, but certainly all the top edge is gone. There appears to be holes in here. Looks like bad rust along there as well. So I'm pretty sure that will have to be replaced. As for the nose section, coming around this way, the centre of it, across the bottom, that's all gone. It's still okay around the two corners. Now, I'm not sure whether that's salvageable. What I'll do is I'll just remove a bit more stuff off the bonnet, a few more pieces off, and I might decide then. There are options, of course. One option is to replace this whole panel, which comes with that rear support section. I think it's all one piece when you buy it from a number of suppliers. The only problem with that is I've heard that they actually don't fit. There are fitting problems around, with some of them around here. They don't line up with the wings, and I also understand some of them don't line up properly around the mouth either. I don't know whether that position's changed, but certainly from what I've read, yes, you can buy the whole section. I think that they call it the bottom pan, but it may not fit properly. Then you'll spend a lot of time trying to alter things to get it to fit to the shape of the actual bonnet. The other option is that I know that monocoque metalworks can provide some repair sections for this piece. Now, as I say, I won't know how much is damaged until I take a little bit more off. So that's another option. So the option there would be to repair this, so using the existing fitting, so it does fit, fits properly, and then repair the damage to the exterior metal. Along with that, I'd have to buy the from monocoque this rear section as well, so they reproduce that as a separate piece. So that's another option. So I haven't decided which way to go yet. I'll start taking a few things off to get a better picture of the damage. Anyway, I've still got other work to do before I get to this, but it was an exercise to actually get this stand ready so I could move straight onto the bonnet when I'm ready to do that. I assume it will be worth it in the end. Certainly being out here on my own working on this, it's a lot easier just to move this around. It's on wheels, of course. It's braked at the moment. They've got brakes on each of the four corners. Very easy to move around and push it out of the way. So just put this in a vertical position and push it over against the side of the garage. So it's worth the effort of making it. It took 50 hours to get to this stage, so a little bit more to do. Probably another couple of hours to get that one in position in there. So it's not quite finished, but it's 98% done.